This presentation is on journalism and television. Television has spread journalism further, faster, and wider than any other medium before it. It has had a profound influence on the way we live and the way we look at the world around us. Its impact has also spread to culture, the economy, and the environment. The profession of journalism refers to the collecting, broadcasting, publishing, or photographing of the news. The most common profession in journalism is that of the reporter. The reporter is the one who does the actual news gathering, the one that is closest to the news source. From the reporter, stories go to a news anchor who will read those stories on the air during a news broadcast. There are two kinds of news broadcasts: local news broadcasts and national news broadcasts. Local news broadcasts take place 3 or 4 times a day. Each broadcast lasts about 30 minutes. The news stories are of local interest and may also contain weather and sports. National news broadcasts take place once a day, also last 30 minutes, and contain news stories of more national interest. Journalism got its start in the 1700s and was popularized by the American and the French Revolutions, which popularized the idea of freedom of the press. Throughout the 1800s, journalism continued to be improved upon, thanks to the efforts of influential journalists such as Horace Greeley, Joseph Pulitzer, and James Gordon Bennett. In the early 1900s, there were 2 inventions that greatly changed the way journalism got out to the public. One was radio. The first news broadcast via radio took place in 1920, and by the 1930s, radio was the most popular source of news for many Americans. In the 1930s, television was invented, and in 1940, the first television news program was broadcasted. By the late 40s, television news broadcasts had taken on many characteristics common to news broadcasts today. In the early 50s, CBS, Columbia Broadcasting Service, launched See It Now, one of the most significant and influential news programs on television. See It Now legitimized television news, putting it on the same footing as newspaper and radio. In the 60s, there were 2 events that greatly changed the way the public perceived television. One was the JFK assassination, and the other was the Vietnam War. These 2 events helped to illustrate that television was more flexible than newspaper or radio, and that television could also have a significant impact on public opinion. Between the 1970s and the present day, television journalism has continued to rise in popularity. Several events during this time changed the way television was reported and perceived. A few include the Iran hostage crisis, the Columbia shuttle disaster, the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and the 9/11 terrorist attacks. One of the finest early examples of television journalism was Edward R. Murrow's See It Now. Edward R. Murrow had previously made his profession in radio broadcasting, but in the early 1950s turned his attention to television. See It Now not only legitimized television as a source for news, but it also set standards for news programs that continue to be in place today. See It Now covered a wide myriad of subjects, from Brown versus Board of Education to the Red Scare to the Korean War to Grandma Moses and Louis Armstrong. See It Now lasted for 7 years, from 1951 to 1958, and during that time it was the most respected newscast. All news programs since See It Now have followed in See It Now's footsteps. Controversy. Just since the 1980s, the fundamental elements of what makes a story newsworthy has been changed, and many argue this has led to a decrease in the quality of the news. Since the 1980s, many news corporations have been taken over by larger business conglomerations such as Disney or Time Warner. This in turn has led to an increased emphasis on money, ratings, and public appeal. In many ways, the news that the people want to hear has taken precedence over the news they need to hear, and this has led to stories with more speculation and conjecture than actual hard facts and information. With the advent of television, business journalism, the branch of journalism dealing with finances and the economy, has been fundamentally changed. The overarching purpose of business journalism is to act as a watchdog on corporate America and to provide the public with important information regarding finances in the stock market, businesses, and investments. Although it remains to be seen exactly what kind of influence broadcast journalism will have on the economy, it has already been demonstrated that there has been a significant link established between businesses and the public via television journalism. The relationship between the environment and television journalism lies in coverage of major environmental issues. There are many environmentalists today who argue that television journalism does not cover these issues enough. This may be because environmental issues are scientifically complex and slow-moving. Consequently, they are bad television. However, what coverage there is typically biased towards environmentalism. Consequently, although the average American may be underinformed on environmental issues, what information he does have is slanted towards environmentalism. Cultural impact. Broadcast journalism's most important impact is cultural. Broadcast journalism has the potential to change people's lives. During 9/11, coverage of the attacks and of the retaliation to the attacks helped America form a strengthened community to stand in the face of terrorism. Additionally, journalism can also uncover corruption, manipulation, and incompetence in the government and in business. An example of this would be in the 1950s when See It Now embarked on a relentless investigation of Senator McCarthy's claims of communist infiltration, eventually leading to the senator's censure by the Senate in 1954. Journalism can also make people, places, events, and issues a part of our collective national knowledge, our culture, thereby strengthening our sense of national identity. The impact that broadcast journalism has in the everyday American's life, whether he realizes it or appreciates it, cannot be overstated. In conclusion, because of the long reach of television journalism into millions of Americans' homes, television has spread journalism further, faster, and wider than any other medium before it. Television has had a significant impact on journalism, and television journalism has had a significant impact on us and the way we live our lives.